Within this lesson, we're going to be going over editors. So in order to create code for websites, you need to have a really good editor. And there's quite a lot out there. There's everything from Notepad to ones called Brackets, Subline. There's even a Microsoft one. Now that's free, so this is available only for Windows machines. And there's also Tanna. And within this course, for the most part, I'm going to be using one called Dreamweaver. So Dreamweaver is an Adobe product and it is a paid version. But there are a bunch of free versions, and just like the ones that I mentioned earlier, these are all open source. So open source means that it's free, or some are just free versions. So Microsoft Expression used to cost, now it's free. And then you could also go with ones like Notepad, which is very basic and straightforward, but it will suit your coding needs. When you're developing HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, all you really need to have is a basic editor, and your browser will actually interpret the code, because those are all front-end codes. CSS, JavaScript, and HTML run natively within your browser, which means that your browser is the one that goes through the code when it reaches this web page, and it interprets the code on the web page. So basically, once you create that HTML file, your browser will know what to do with it when you open that up within the browser. So this is just the location of where the file is located, and as you can see, it runs through that HTML code and shows it within the browser. So it's not showing all that source code that is also available. So when we go to view the source, we see that there's a whole bunch of additional HTML code, and all it's outputting, all the browser's outputting, is just this HTML code that it understands to output. So what it does is when it goes through and reads this file, the source code, it reads that, okay, this is an HTML document. This is indicated here by doc type HTML. So it understands that this is an HTML document. It understands how to render it out. Here it's got the opening HTML tags, closing HTML tags, head, opening, and closing. So it knows not to show any of the content within the head. And the head is just going to contain some meta information, some linked information, and sometimes scripts as well. And then within the body, so we've got some stuff that's commented out here. If you're using an older browser, it's going to ask you to update the browser. And then here is where we add the site content. So we've just got an opening paragraph, closing paragraph, and we've got our content there that gets output. And here we've got our script tags and some default analytics code, so we can just put in that analytics ID in there. So this is all you really need to render out a web page. But if you want to look at all the different options, it is important to get one that you are comfortable with and that does serve your needs. So something like Notepad would be one of the simplest ones, and relatively they're all fairly straightforward. You can open up the HTML code, you can write the HTML code, and sometimes you can change the colors, the size of the font, you can change the styling that's showing you within the preview there. And the better ones, of course, so if you do something like this, you see that it actually does drop down all the different available tags. So we do see that, I think that was actually for styling, but if you were to do something like style equals, and if you were to type in a style like a background, you can see that it's already making those suggestions for you. And that's a good sign for editors, that you do want to have these suggestions that come in and do actually provide you these options. And that just makes it quicker for a coder. And some of them will actually close off the tags and some won't. So again, it depends on what your preference is, and when you render this out, you can see that quickly I added in that paragraph. So that's Notepad. Now we're going to look at Subline. So Subline, again, open source, does ask you to buy it, but you can use the free version indefinitely. Well, as of right now, you still can. So there's a version for Windows, there's OS X, and Notepad as well is across platform. So it doesn't matter what operating system you're on, there should be a version for it. So when we open up Subline, and then this is going to be Subline, and we're just going to open up that same file there. So this was that HTML document. And as you can see, again, it styles it out, makes it very easy to read. And you can see that we've got our paragraph there. And the good thing about Subline is I think that it actually does do the closures for you, or maybe it doesn't. And again, it's the same thing, that it's fairly easy, and it does have those suggestions. But you do have to load in what's called different packages, and then the packages will allow you to control what's going to happen within there. So you can do this prettify, so we can make it look really nice. So if we've got a whole bunch of white space there, or so I'm just going to add in a bunch of extra white space. And we can do what we can do this prettify, so we can do prettify code, and actually it's not available, so you do have to install the package for it, but again, it is fairly powerful, and you can update all the different types of code that you're using, as well as load in these different packages. You're able to browse packages, so it's got a whole bunch of really good packages on available for it as well. So this makes it a really powerful coding solution. So if you're actually looking to do more than just HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, you might be looking at something like Subline if you're going into more coding. And with Subline, you have the ability to create projects and group your projects in different groupings of different projects. So the next one that we're going to look at is Brackets. So Brackets is an Adobe product. It actually does have a GitHub repo, so we can see here that it's an open source editor for web written in JavaScript, HTML, and CSS. So Brackets.io, and it's got a whole bunch of options here. And the good thing about Brackets is that you do have this ability to support PSD files, so it does get code hints from a PSD file. So a PSD file is a Photoshop file. So this is one of the good things about it. And much like Subline, you can open up projects and work within the projects. So here we're going to open up that same HTML file, and again, you have relatively the same options here. So all of them are going to have slightly different options, but generally the setup is going to be the same, where you can have these projects, you can open up different projects and work on all the files within the project. So next we're going to look at Microsoft Expression Web 4. So I really do like using this one because it is fairly similar to what I'm used to with Dreamweaver. So I do use this one also on a regular basis, but again, I do prefer to use Dreamweaver just because I've been using it for such a long time, and I'm very familiar with all of the shortcuts and all of the availability within Dreamweaver. But again, this one is another great resource. And another good thing about it is there's no cost to it. So it's a free version, it's full version, and it's right from Microsoft. So if you're worried about some of these open source projects and you want to get something from a familiar name, familiar source, so we've got this Microsoft one that's going to be similar to Dreamweaver. And you can download it and run it for free on your Windows machine. And lastly, we're going to look at Tanna. So again, this is another open source one, and this is a very powerful open source editor. So as you can see, when I do open this up, and this template here that I've got when I created this new page, this was actually a template that's available within them. So if I was to go new, I could create a new file, I could create a project, I could create a new web project, and there's a whole bunch of options here. So if I was just to go creating a new file, And so this creates that new file. And you also have this option, new from template. So you can have these pre-built templates. So if you want to use an HTML5 template, all you have to do is just do new HTML5 template, and as you can see here, it preloads all of this code that's ready to go. So it's got all of our header information there, it's got the viewport, which allows it for mobile, it's got these Apple shortcuts, which also make it mobile friendly, and then it's got your basic boilerplate there where we've got our body, we've got a div, so we've got our headers, our navigation, a div for content. So you'd be putting in your content here. And then it's got its footer and its copyright information. So by default, this is a really good starting template. And this is a really good starting point when you start developing HTML and JavaScript. Again, we're going to be providing links for all of these within the next within the resource section of this course, and it is encouraged that you do look around, because whatever application you begin to use, it should be fairly easy and intuitive for you. So if you don't like one, you can always go try another one. And again, they all do have their pluses and then their minuses as well. But if you're looking for something that's fairly powerful, open source, then I would suggest going to Tanna, because it does have these pre-built templates, and it's even better than what we do have with Dreamweaver as well.